Hi everyone, it's Diana,
I'm Nick.
and this is Team RCIA on Tuesday with Team RCIA, and today we are doing a Q&A on a question that we received recently about how to receive Orthodox Christians into the full communion of the Catholic Church.
So there's this causes some consternation because it's unusual. Not We don't very often get Orthodox Christians who want to become Catholic, and so the first thing we have to understand is there's a whole Eastern Rite of the Church that has existed since I don't know since forever.
I'm so bad, I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, since the beginning of Christianity, I mean, really, because Constantinople moved the center of civilization from Rome to what is now Istanbul. He renamed it at the time Constantinople. Constantine, Emperor Constantine, moved everything to what is now Istanbul. And the rites of the church developed in that part of the world somewhat separately from the rites of the church in the western part of the world. And that was all fine until about
Oh, yeah.
1000 or so, the 11th century. Is that right? 11th
I
century?
think so.
Yes.
I'm getting
10,
so
10 something,
I'm digging deep.
1017 or whatever. Anyway, there was a split between up until then it was just different rites, but everybody was in communion with each other. And then about the 11th century or so, there was a split. And the Eastern Church excommunicated the Western Church, and the Western Church excommunicated the Eastern Church. And so now we have all these Eastern or Orthodox churches, the Greek Orthodox, the Ukrainian Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox. And these Orthodox churches are not in communion with the Roman Catholic Church.
However, we recognize their sacraments and their hierarchy. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
All right. So there, that is somewhat different than the Protestant churches, where we recognize the validity of their baptism,
Yeah, but nothing
but
after that.
not the other sacraments.
Mostly it comes down to who we recognize as a valid bishop.
Yeah.
And so the Eastern Orthodox bishops we recognize as valid bishops, but they're just not in communion with Roman Catholics. Whereas most Protestant bishops, we don't recognize them as validly ordained.
So the question that we received was about an Eastern Orthodox person who wanted to become uh, part of the Roman Catholic
Part
Church.
of his parish, where he
Yes,
lives.
I think it was a she, but
She.
that's okay. And the person asking was wondering what is the process for receiving them. So the director kind of understood that the RCIA says a little something different about Eastern Christians than it does about Protestant Christians who are being received. And so, what is the practice, and when would be the best time to receive this Eastern Orthodox person into the Roman Catholic Church? So we have to go into part two of the RCIA, part two, section three, I think it is, where it talks about what do we do with our Christian brothers and sisters who want to be received, and it says there specifically in paragraph 474, paragraph 474, about what is the process for receiving Eastern Orthodox Christians. And it says there that no liturgical rite is required, but simply a profession of Catholic faith. It's
Yep.
like, okay, sounds good. But then we're thinking, but wait a minute. Profession of Catholic faith sounds like a liturgical rite, right? So, what really does that mean? Uh, so the essentials is that really this is about making a statement, but it's not it's a huge deal for the people who are involved. But in terms of communion and movement over from one communion to the other, it's not a really difficult process. But how do you actually do it is the question.
Yeah, and so that is a little bit complicated.
Mm-hmm.
even though the rite says, the RCI says, no liturgical rite is required, as Diana said, the language for the profession of faith comes from a ritual. It comes from the ritual for receiving Protestant Christians into full communion. And so we sort of would be taking that out of the liturgy and saying, all right, Miss Eastern Rite Orthodox Christian, say these words, and now you'll be Roman Catholic. I mean, really, that's what the
It sounds a
RCI
little
implies. And
strange.
yes, it seems strange.
So we asked a person who we can all recognize is just like the RCIA guru, and is just prolific in his writing about church history and the RCIA. That's Father Paul Turner. And so we asked him, I think we asked him this very question years ago, and he had written an answer about it. And I'll post a link to his answer on this about that weirdness about the RCIA saying no liturgical rite. And so he goes back to the actual Latin text of the RCIA to see what the Latin text said. And he says really the translation of it is a little too translated. The Latin text really says something more like, nothing more is required of Eastern churches coming to the fullness of Catholic communion, however, than what a simple profession of Catholic faith requires. So it is nuanced a little bit more simply in the Latin, but you can't really say that in the English in a clear way. So he's agreed that no liturgical rite is required, but there does still need to be that statement. And the statement you'd find in RCIA paragraph 491 and 492. That's the statement of the declaration of faith that the Christian would say, I believe and profess everything that Roman Catholic Church believes and says as dogma. And then the act of reception given by the minister who receives that statement.
So the priest would lay his hand on the candidate, on the Orthodox person, and I forget what the actual text is, but he says that text, that is the act of reception. It's in the RCIA, you can see it there. But basically says, I receive you into the full community of the Catholic Church, or whatever the official language is. And so that is a ritual. It's very simple and very plain, but it is a ritual. And what I think Father Paul Turner's understanding of the actual Latin text means is then we'd end right there. That would be the reception. We would not then go further and confirm that person as we would with a Lutheran or a Methodist or a Baptist. We would celebrate the sacrament of confirmation. We would not do that with an Orthodox Christian.
Because their confirmation in the Orthodox Church is validly recognized by the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so you can't repeat that confirmation. And I think it's really interesting that rubric at paragraph 492, where it says that the minister says the act of reception while placing his hand on the person, except if they will be confirmed immediately after. And so the only time the minister would place their hand on the person is if you're receiving that statement from an Orthodox Christian. So it's kind of really interesting.
Complex.
And I had never recognized that there, because the laying on of hands in confirmation happens in the actual confirmation itself. But if you're not doing that, there is that laying on of hands. Sorry there. So we've kind of tried to imagine, okay, how might we do this? You have to do what is best for the actual person in front of you. So all of these suggestions are suggestions, and you have to discern what the best way to proceed would be. If it's beneficial for your Eastern Rite person to simply do this in a really low-key way, you can just do this as a simple statement.
Kind of a little prayer that you would do in the parish office or in some place that, it's not necessary to do it in the church itself.
So if that is the way they want to go and that seems agreeable to everyone, then you can do that. The rite allows for that.
But the Orthodox tend to be even more liturgical than Roman Catholics, so this person may want to do it in the church and have a little bit fuller experience. So then you could do it at a again a kind of a prayer service, not necessarily a mass, in the church itself. Again, if that's more beneficial for the person, so a small group might get together for like a liturgy of the word maybe if you have a daily mass chapel separate from the main space or the main space, either one is fine.
Or if you think it would be really beneficial for the entire parish community to witness this and to celebrate and mark this occasion with our Eastern Rite brother or sister, this could be done in a Eucharist, in a Mass. And so in that case, at the Mass, as we would normally do, we would all say together the Nicene Creed. And then after the Nicene Creed, that dialogue, paragraph 491 and 492, would take place. Again, no confirmation because the person is already validly confirmed. And then they would participate in the Eucharist just like normal with everyone else. Now,
And I would suggest not doing this in conjunction with the reception
yes.
of Protestant Christians into full communion, because that thing with confirmation gets all kind of
Yeah.
visually confused, and people are wondering, well, why isn't Sally being confirmed
Yeah.
and everybody else is being confirmed? So it's sort of for the assembly, for catechesis of the assembly, it's just kind of better to separate those two celebrations into different moments. I would also not do this at the Easter Vigil. I would not receive I wouldn't receive any other Christian into full communion at the Easter Vigil, but lots and lots of parishes have the practice of receiving Protestant Christians into full communion at the Easter Vigil. I would not do that with the Orthodox Christian. I would do their reception before the vigil so they can celebrate the vigil fully with us as in communion with Roman Catholics.
Or at some point during the Easter season, or any time of year,
Yeah, whenever they're ready.
the person
Whenever
is
they're
ready.
ready. Yeah.
Do you want to say something about the Eastern Rite
Yeah.
Catholic and the
So
Latin Rite Catholic?
so here's just to make things even more fun. When that split happened in the 11th century, not all Eastern Rite Christians excommunicated the Western Church, and the Western Church was not excommunicating anyone who agreed with whatever it was they were fighting over. So there exists many Eastern Rite Catholic churches, not Eastern Rite Orthodox, but Eastern Rite Catholic churches. So while there is a Russian Orthodox Church, there is also a Russian Catholic Church. While there's a Greek Orthodox Church, there is also a Greek Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Now, if you went to a liturgy if you were in Greece and you go to a Greek Orthodox Mass, and then the next Sunday you go to a Greek Catholic Mass, you probably won't be able to tell the difference. I mean, the rituals are very similar. But the Greek Catholic Church, the Russian Catholic Church, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, these are all in communion with the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. So if you're in Greece and on your first Sunday in Greece, you go to the Russian Orthodox Church for liturgy, you cannot go to communion in that church. And the next week, you go to the Greek Catholic Church for liturgy. You can go to communion in that church. That church is in communion with the Roman Catholic Church.
So why is all of that important
yes.
in this question?
Yes.
When an Eastern Rite Christian is received into the Roman Catholic Church, they do not become Roman Catholic.
So they're not really received into the Roman Catholic Church. They're received into communion with the Roman Catholic Church.
So, for example, a Greek Orthodox Christian who makes the profession of faith in this dialogue, and that profession is received by a Catholic minister, becomes a Greek Catholic, a person of Greek Catholicism, Greek Catholic, not Greek Orthodox. So
and not Roman Catholic.
Yes. So it it's terminology, but it's also ritual. And so ideally, they would celebrate their sacraments in a Greek Catholic community. I know in many dioceses, archdioceses in the United States, there are Eastern Catholic churches scattered throughout. I know in our diocese we have a couple or so, but not all the time. It's not always an Eastern Catholic community is not always available. And so then it is permissible for an Eastern Catholic to celebrate, and they are welcome at any time to celebrate in the Roman Catholic sacraments, in the Roman Catholic community. And vice versa. Roman Catholics are able to celebrate and receive communion in the parallel Eastern Catholic rite. And so it's a distinction that we want to make, and it does get a little complex and a little nuancy. But I think the big point here is that we're constantly trying to figure out ways to foster communion and foster unity, and to really take seriously the differences that we have, and to figure out how where do we align, and where do we agree, and what can we do together. And so that's a beautiful thing that the RCIA provides us, and our history gives us. One really good text. You want to talk about this text here?
Yeah, this is a book called When Other Christians Become Catholic, again by Father Paul Turner, and it just goes into lots and lots of detail about any kind of Christian. First of all, the first part of the book is a bunch of history of how we got split up in the first place, and then the second part of the book is like pastoral instances of what you do if you had a Lutheran that comes from this kind of circumstance and has these issues, or a Methodist child who's 8 years old and wants to become Catholic. He gives lots of case studies, and including what we would do with Eastern Rite Catholics. One point he makes in the book is that I thought was kind of interesting. If say Greek Orthodox person or Eastern Orthodox person wants to actually become Roman Catholic and not Greek Catholic or Russian Catholic, they want to become Roman Catholic. Well, then you got to take all that to Rome, and there has to be an administrative thing at the Vatican,
Yeah.
And really, I think what Sally wants, and if she wants to celebrate liturgy in her parish, in the Catholic parish in her neighborhood, really, she just wants to be a parishioner. She wants to go to the parish banquet. She wants to help out with the youth car wash. She wants to go to communion on Sunday with her friends. And if she's Greek Catholic, she can do all that stuff. There's no reason for her to become Roman Catholic.
Yeah. So check out Father Paul's book. Also check out his blog there. We put links in the sidebar there to help you with all of this. I think I mentioned the point about, this is all about striving for communion. What Father Paul talks about in the history and the development of the rituals for receiving Christians into the Catholic communion is really striking, because it's embedded in the RCIA, where we begin with what we have in common, and that is always baptism. Baptism is what unites us and strengthens our bond together, and from there we can figure it out. Before the RCIA, we really kind of were more at odds with one another,
Yeah,
ritually.
and that comes out in the history in
Yeah.
Paul's book too.
Yeah.
It was like if you were a faithful Lutheran before the Second Vatican Council, and you went to Lutheran liturgy every Sunday, and you were raising your kids to be good Christians, and you knew Scripture, and and you wanted to become a Roman Catholic, you'd have to sort of there's a forget what it's called, but there's a like a little statement or a little ritual that more or less you admit that you are a heretic.
Yeah.
That was all before the Second Vatican Council. Well, a lot of that changed with the Second Vatican Council, where we realized Protestant Christians are not heretics. So we do have some doctrinal differences that unfortunately keep us separated at the communion table, but they're not heretics who are saying, Jesus never rose from the dead or Jesus is not the Son of God. That none of that is the case.
So it's a good model for us when we come across our own divisions with other people, where start with what you share in common,
Yes.
start with what you agree with, and then go from there. And so in this the last part of our Lent, as we're preparing for the great Paschal feast and everything, we continue to pray for you. We
Do you
Before I
have a
forget,
free gift?
yes, a I always have to say that's redundant because gifts are free. Oops. So I'm going to put this here. What is this free gift, Nick?
This is a download about 6 common questions about the Easter Vigil that you can use as a handout for your team to do team training. You can use it in your parish bulletin. You can just do one question a week throughout the Easter season as sort of a mystagogy on the Easter Vigil. Any way you want to use it, it's yours.
So there. Let's see. What is this? Is we just celebrated the fourth Sunday, and we have the fifth Sunday. So one more scrutiny for all of you with your elect, and there. So thank you for listening, and thank you for working so diligently with all of the different nuances that you come across in your ministry in your parishes. We are grateful for everything that you do.
Ditto. Thanks very much, folks. Take care. God bless.
We'll see you next week. Bye.